Thanks, Joe, and thanks everybody for being here today. Really excited to be talking again about some of the authoring experience work that we've been doing, and specifically the layout paragraphs module with all of you. So I'm going to stop sharing my video here and instead share my screen. And we'll get started. Great. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. I'm going to get captions going as well. So yeah, again, really excited to be talking about this once again with you all. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about implementing the layout paragraphs module, how to install and configure the module on a Drupal website. I've done a number of these sessions before, really focusing on demoing the capabilities of layout paragraphs in sort of a fully formed existing website. And I'm still gonna start there today just so that everybody has a clear sense for what layout paragraphs can offer. What I really want to spend more time on today is getting into configuring and implementing the modules. So looking at some of the configuration options and what it actually takes to install this. So let's get started. What we'll cover, again, we'll do a quick overview of layout paragraphs and why we at Atten have chosen to invest in this approach and why we use layout paragraphs for, at this point, most of our client work. I want to talk a little bit about status and adoption. It's been really exciting to continue to see adoption for the module grow. I am going to quickly demo some of the features of layout paragraphs, looking at our own website at atten.io. Again, just so everyone gets a sense for maybe how this fits in the big picture, the complete picture of a website for helping bolster the authoring experience. Once that's out of the way, we're going to dive in, though, on installing and configuring the module. And for that, we'll be doing a demo of a kind of vanilla, brand new Drupal 9 website. And then finally, as always, we should have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. So really looking forward to that. First, just really quickly, there are a few prerequisite ideas, or at least things that would be concepts that would be useful for folks who already have a background in. It looks like, just based on the registrants, most of you all already have most of this experience that we're kind of looking for here. But first, experience using Drupal is a big plus. We're gonna start the demo with the assumption that folks have some experience using Drupal, some experience with the paragraphs module, or at least the idea behind the paragraphs module, experience configuring content types and fields, and then finally, some experience working with users, roles, and permissions, because we're going to get into that a little bit and how that relates to layout paragraphs as well. All right, just to provide a little bit of background on the module. So why layout paragraphs? We as an agency have been using layout paragraphs for the majority of our client projects as of late. And a lot of the development happening on the, you can see on Drupal.org is being driven, at least for our part, being driven by needs that we're seeing that kind of start with what we're seeing with clients. What led us to this as a solution is first wanting to deliver a really expressive, extremely easy to use, drag and drop content authoring experience that's very much focused on authoring. Not as much focused on site building and on development, but really focused on making it easy for marketers and for members of editorial teams to produce, design, and publish content quickly. We wanted to do that without sacrificing structured content. We looked at a few other options and felt that kind of embracing a paragraphs-driven approach still uses so much of what Drupal is, it's just really awesome for, with creating structured content types and then collections of fields within those content types. We wanted to leverage familiar workflow and configuration with fields, field widgets, and field formatters. So rather than stepping outside of these conventions and doing something different, we wanted to keep the developer and site builder experience familiar. We wanted something that does not require migration. If you already have a website that's running paragraphs, layout paragraphs will work out of the box. It installs seamlessly on top of paragraphs. And then finally, it was really important to us that we invested in a system that provided APIs for continuing to improve the authoring experience. And I'll talk a little bit about that just briefly with Mercury Editor, which is a product that we've been working on that's a collection of tools built largely on top of layout paragraphs. And I'll just touch on that briefly here in a minute. So to dig in on the status of layout paragraphs and how to learn more, there is, of course, the module page on Drupal.org. If you go to drupal.org/project/layout_paragraphs, lots of great activity happening there. As far as releases, there is a stable production-ready release for version 1.0.0. The 2x branch is a complete rewrite of the original module, and it has been re-architected to provide some of those APIs that we're talking about, and really to focus on developer experience and the code base. I think important to point out that 2x does not require any special upgrade process to move from the version 1 to version 2. The data model hasn't changed at all. It's really just a change in the code base and a change of the architecture of the module, as well as some of the features have changed. But safe to upgrade from 1 to 2. It is in beta on 2. I would encourage, of course, backing up, testing, etc. Adoption continues to grow for layout paragraphs. Today, we're at just over, well, almost 2,200 users, actually. This is just stats based on Drupal.org, available from the D.O module page. Almost 200 people on the 2x branch. We'd love to see that continue to climb as well. We'd love to see a continued use of the latest betas as we approach a release candidate for the 2x branch. Finally, I mentioned this before, Mercury Editor is a product that we've been working on that creates an incredibly easy to use, effortless drag and drop publishing experience for Drupal authoring, for creating content in Drupal. And Mercury is built largely on top of layout paragraphs. When we do a demo of our own website, of the Atten website here in a minute, what we'll be looking at really is what we've been talking about as the Mercury Editor. And there's a lot that is provided by layout paragraphs, which we'll kind of get into in a little more detail as we dig into a demo of, again, a fresh Drupal 9 install. All right, that's all the background. So I'm going to jump over to the atten.io website. And again, talk about how we're using this and kind of what this can look like in the wild. And again, for those of you who have seen these presentations before, this may be, well, it will certainly be familiar and maybe a little repetitive. But again, just want to make sure everyone really understands clearly what is possible with some of what we'll be talking about. So the kinds of content that we're most interested in empowering the authoring experience for tend to be longer form, highly visual content that varies a little bit from page to page. I think the combination of browsing plus Zoom plus Lambda running in the background is making things run a little slow, so I apologize for that, bear with me. So an example of that would be the About page on our own website, where there's text and images, and the layout changes quite a bit as we scroll through the page. Another great example would be the Work page. We use layout paragraphs for a lot of the pages on our site and a lot of the different content that's in our site. Each of these case studies is created using layout paragraphs and Mercury Editor. If I click into a case study, again, there's this need to have images and text intermixed throughout the page, along with other media types like galleries. And those, while the components are very similar from one case study to another, there's also a lot of variability in the way the content is structured. So if I scroll down to a different case study, you'll see that the structure of this page varies quite a bit from the case study we were just looking at. Even though, again, there's obviously some shared components and some of the building blocks for this case study, the design varies quite a bit and needs to vary quite a bit from one case study to the next. That's really, again, a great example for the kinds of content that we wanted to support with these tools. So let's take a look at how this actually works in action. I'm going to go over to the admin content page. I'll just quickly create a new case study. I'm not going to go through the entire process. Again, I just want to give a sense for what layout paragraphs provides specifically. Choose case study from the list. It's worth noting that our custom theme for our website, for folks who have Drupal development expertise or background, we're using the same custom theme for the edit forms as we are for the front end of the website, which is what gives it this, the look is very similar when moving between edit forms and the front end of the site. I'm going to skip all of these fields. Layout paragraphs work seamlessly with moderation. So this is just in the idea state, which is several states before this would ever be published. Go ahead and click save. And the first thing that we see is just a message that says we haven't created any, and then this word content is simply the name of the field. So we haven't created any of this content yet. We haven't created any of the name of this field yet. And as such, this is customizable. This is using the formatter, the field formatter for layout paragraphs, which provide the front end editing experience. And again, we'll take a look at what that looks like or how that works right out of the box. But right here from the view tab, I can start creating content. This enables the editor. We now have this placeholder message that says what we need to do to get started. I'm going to add a new section. I'll choose a one-column section, drop in our first component. And as I said a minute ago, I'm only going to do a couple of these just so that we have plenty of time to go over the installation and configuration process. This integrates seamlessly with media, and I think here using Entity Browser to provide the browsing experience for this content. Choose a couple of images and place them. Rearrange these quickly, and then hit save, and that new component is dropped immediately onto the page. And again, this is I use the word component and paragraph type interchangeably, but this is just a paragraph type, this masthead, and we'll take a look at some others when we get to the fresh Drupal 9 install. Real quickly, I want to look at some of the formatting options that are available to sections. This is not provided specifically by layout paragraphs. This is provided by a custom layout plugin, and Mercury editor provides these style customizations and provides this interface of providing a separate tab. But something that we'll talk a little bit about when we get to the Drupal 9 website is just permission settings for those custom layout plugin forms. And it's just worth noting, so when we get to there, kind of connecting back to this, the layout plugin forms, this is a layout plugin, is a custom layout plugin form. And on this form, that again, the details of which are being provided by Mercury editor, I can choose light on dark, a background color, hit save, and we can see those theme changes immediately applied. A lot of those mechanics are handled by layout paragraphs. Again, the formatting specifically is not. The formatting is provided by a custom layout plugin. All right, now the second section, something a little bit more straightforward. This will do 2-column. I'm again going to go into the style options. This time I'm going to choose the primary region and just change the background here to a light blue and make it padded. And hit save. You can see this primary region has this light blue background. Go over and grab some text that I can easily paste in. This edit in place functionality also provided by Mercury editor, something we won't get into too much today in terms of demoing or talking about configuration for. But the ability to create these text paragraphs, really any paragraphs, and drop them into these layouts. All of that is being provided, of course, by layout paragraphs. One more text block over here on the right. And then what layout paragraphs is particularly good at, what it's really designed for, is being able to quickly drop these paragraphs into a layout, move them very easily with drag and drop controls. There is also now keyboard controls. So when you click into an item, you can move that around with the keyboard, press enter to stop. And when you're done, simply hit save, close out of the editor. And we see that the content in that front end view, again, really close, really similar to what we were looking at in the back end. So it provides, again, this very simple, easy to use authoring experience for longer form content where the structure really varies as you move down the page, where there's the need to mix media and text and other types of structured content. Okay, that's a quick look at layout paragraphs. And again, a more kind of fully formed experience or website. I'm going to go now over to a fresh Drupal 9 install. We're going to take a look at how to get layout paragraphs working right out of the box. So this website, obviously running Drupal 9. Well, it at least says it's running Drupal 9. I think as of right now, absolutely no modules have been installed in Drupal. The code base was pulled down using Composer. There are only 2 requirements in Composer, only 2 modules that were installed into the code base from Composer. The first is stories. The second is layout paragraphs. And that's really it. That's all that's running what we'll be looking at today. Composer, of course, manages all of the dependencies for those modules and installs everything else that's necessary, including the paragraphs module. I'm going to start with stories. Now, stories is not required by layout paragraphs at all. Stories is a really simple Drupal module that provides a collection of components or a collection of paragraph types for covering all the bases for sites that, again, need the flexibility of the paragraphs module. So stories and stories media, which is a submodule of stories, again, this just provides a collection of paragraph types. We'll take a look at that here in a second. Install these. Again, bear with me. My computer slowly does its thing. See if those have installed yet. Not quite yet. Okay, take a look. Great, so installing stories, installed all of the required modules, including paragraphs, and then also installed a collection of paragraph types. So we don't have to worry about installing those from scratch or creating those from scratch. The other module I just want to install really quickly is layout paragraphs. We'll take a look at the permissions module, which is a submodule of layout paragraphs here in a minute, but for now, we'll just install layout paragraphs. Again, this is going to install the required modules, which really is, at this point, just the layout discovery module. Okay, and those have been installed. Now, one thing that is important when setting up layout paragraphs on a website, there's the concept of a section or layout paragraph type. You can use any paragraph type you want, but you do need a paragraph type that's dedicated to storing or to be responsible for the layout itself, for having all of the layout information with it. And this is really what's used as like a layout section. That's really just another paragraph type. You can call it whatever you want to. All you have to do to tell the module that this is the paragraph you want to use for layout paragraphs is turn on this layout paragraphs behavior for the paragraph that you've created, the paragraph type you've created. That opens up this select where you choose the different layout types you want this particular paragraph type to support. It's worth noting that today we're just going to look at one section type. You can create as many different section types as you want, and each section type could support its own layouts. So you could say something like, 3-column section and have only your 3-column layouts available to that paragraph type, or 1 column, et cetera. In most contexts, it works fine to just have a single section type where all of the paragraphs are available to it. Okay, that's really all we have to do to get this working. So we've created this new section paragraph type. Now we just need to decide what content type we want to enable layout paragraphs for. I think basic page is probably more fitting than article. So we'll jump into a basic page, manage fields, add a new field, go down to the paragraph reference field. We'll call this content. Of course, we can call that whatever we want to. Leave this as paragraph and the number of values as unlimited. And here we have all of the normal options that are available for a paragraph reference field. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to, rather than choose the paragraph types I want, I'm going to choose exclude and then select nothing. So basically all paragraph types should be available. Hit save, and we've created the field. The only thing we need to do to make this work as a layout, as an actual layout paragraph field, is choose layout paragraphs as the field widget. And that's what provides the UI for actually working with layouts. And then we'll talk a little more about these options over here on the right once we're actually working with content. So that's all that's needed to make that layout paragraphs field on the form. The other thing that's worth noting is to make this display correctly on the front end, it's important to change the format to layout paragraphs. We'll look at layout builder, layout paragraphs builder here in a minute, but for now we'll just see this layout paragraphs and hit save. Okay, great, and that's it. That's everything required for getting layout paragraphs installed and working on a website. Let's take a look at how this actually works. We'll add a new piece of content, click on basic page. My first page. Here's the content field that we just created. We have this plus button to add a new component. We can choose from the entire list of components. As I said a second ago, we chose to include absolutely everything. It's also worth noting we can start with anything we want. So we don't have to start with a section here. And for that matter, using layout paragraphs, we wouldn't really have to have a section at all. So the layout paragraphs UI, if that's something that is fitting for your project, is kind of ability to drag and drop things. In the case of no sections, it would be drag and drop things up and down very easily and have this editor UI still in place. You don't have to have sections at all. You can configure this so that you can just drop paragraph types into the area here, the content area. But I'm going to start with a section, just grab a 3-column. And again, hopefully you're seeing a lot of the similarities that exist between this interface and the interface I showed on our own website. But this is what this looks like when installed right out of the box. We'll add a text item in the left column. Add an image in the center. And again, hopefully gives everybody an idea of how this works on a fresh install. Okay, a couple things worth pointing out. Currently on this implementation we're looking at right here, if I click this plus button inside of a section, you'll see that section is now gone. I cannot add a section inside a section. That's a configuration option. We'll take a look at how that works here in a second. I think that's the main option that I wanted to look at. Oh, and the other thing is, again, as I've said, we can add components outside of the section. So if I wanted to add text below this, this is actually going to be below, outside the section entirely. I can do that. And here's our text that's outside of the section. And if I wanted, again, to have just paragraphs outside of the section, we can do that as well. So does not require using layouts. But all those are configuration options. So there are plenty of times where that is not advantageous or where you wouldn't want users to be able to make those decisions. So we'll take a look at how that works. Just going back into the structure, to admin structure, content types, back into basic page. We'll look at manage form display. And take a look at these options. So a couple options worth taking note of. The first is maximum nesting depth. So right now this is 0, which means layouts cannot be nested. I'm going to switch that to 2, just for the purpose of demoing this. The other option that has been selected is paragraphs are required to be added inside of a layout. Change that as well. Click update. I'll be honest, I have no idea what that does to these existing paragraphs or to the interface. So I'm just going to delete them since I have just changed the settings and have said that we can no longer add components without, or rather we are requiring sections in order to add a component. So that one option that we looked at says paragraphs must be added inside of a layout. So now the only option is to add a section or a layout. Choose, let's say, 2-column. And now we have the option to add whatever we want, including section, because we've changed that maximum nesting depth to 2. So we can add a section within a section. We'll go to 2-column. And then we can add another section within this section. And most sites will not need this functionality, but it is available for some. I'm always amazed at the really interesting ways that this module is used, ways that I had never thought of when I was working with the team architecting this or thinking of all of the things that might need to be possible or supported. If I click the plus again, you'll see that section is missing from the list because we've said the maximum nesting depth is 2 for sections. Similarly, JavaScript should validate this correctly. So if I choose a 3-column section, I'm not able to move that 3-column into the 1 because it would be nesting just too deep. So all of that is handled via validation with JavaScript. Okay, I think that's most of the field options that I wanted to cover. Let's take a look at the field formatter. So one thing that is new in the 2x branch is the field formatter. It provides the layout paragraphs builder experience in the front end, which is something that we have been really interested in pursuing since the beginning of this module and have had feedback from a lot of other folks that that's something that they're also interested in. It's really building the experience directly into the front end. So we're going to switch the formatter to layout paragraphs builder. We have the exact same options again. This is one thing we've spent some time trying to decide if what the most appropriate way of handling these options is. But for right now, these are completely separate from the widget settings. So you have to configure the formatter separately from the widget, which is both a feature and that these can be configured differently. You could use a different message, etc. It can also be a little confusing when setting this up. I'm going to add a message here to get started, add a new section. We'll require paragraphs to be added inside a layout. Go ahead and support maximum depth of 1. Save. Let's take a look at what that does to the interface here. So I'm going to add some text just to have something in this layout. Save our first page. Okay, and now that we have switched to the layout paragraphs builder formatter, let me actually disable this really quickly just so everyone really sees clearly what I'm talking about. Using just the layout paragraphs formatter, still looks the same. I mean, it's a very simple layout. It just really, all of that nesting does nothing because there's no content in there. It just threw some text on the right-hand side. And because we're using the layout paragraphs formatter, this is what we see. If we switch that to layout paragraphs builder, that adds this edit content toggle. We edit content, it loads the builder directly into the front end. We can make whatever changes we want to. Let's add the same desert image again, which has been added down deep in these sections. Hit save, close. And again, we can see that reloaded immediately right in front of us. So for folks who want to provide a front end experience, or rather an authoring experience that closely resembles the front end and that is really seamless, this is a really great option for providing again, that kind of getting really close to what you see is what you get, editing for authors. One other thing worth noting very quickly, I said this at the beginning, but these are just reference fields. So there's nothing preventing us from adding a second field to the same content type. And I'll just take a look at that really quickly, just so everyone sees how that works or how that can work. If we add, let's say that we want to add a header field for content that's just going to go in a header area for our nodes or for our pages. Leave that again as paragraph and unlimited. This time we'll just include section, text, and image. Save. Again, change the form to layout paragraphs. Put this above content. Save. On display. Change this to layout paragraphs. Actually, we'll do the builder again. Save. Then if we go back to edit our first page, we now have this new field above the content field where we can add whatever content we want. And this becomes especially powerful on the front end. You can imagine if you had multiple, and obviously the theming with this makes it a little tough, but if you had multiple fields where each had this kind of flexible ability that's provided by layout paragraphs, but each were in different regions of the page, they can all work together. So we can actually toggle both editors and be editing at the same time, save and close out. Okay, that covers most of the configuration options for layout paragraphs out of the box. Let's take a look really quickly at permissions, which can get really complicated, but I just want to spend a few minutes showing what custom capabilities there are, or what capabilities are right out of the box. Again, just creating a role and assigning permissions. So I'm going to create a new role, call this editor. Go to the permissions for the editor. And let's see here, what all do we need? We need the entity browser permission to add images. We need image media. Actually, I'm going to skip all of that and go to, let's see here. Let's go back to extend. What I really need to do is turn on permissions module to start with. So we'll turn on layout paragraphs permissions. Now I'm also going to turn on the paragraphs type permissions module. Go back to roles. And edit permissions for the editor role. And getting into paragraph types, we'll just say this user can create text, image, delete image. The thing, obviously what gets really complex about this interface really grows with all of the different paragraph types that have been added. We'll allow this user to create section content, delete content, do create new content for basic page, delete own content. Okay, as I'm going through this, I'm realizing that this is going to take a little longer than we have for this demo. So I'm going to actually back out of this and just talk through what some of these permissions enable in the interface. So we'll go back to our content, take a look at this first page, and there are a few things worth noting. The layout paragraphs permissions module provides two relevant permission settings. One is for moving or reordering paragraphs, and the other is for editing the layout plugin configuration. And we'll take a look at what both of those mean. So I will take a look at just what those permissions are really quickly. So these two, if we allow someone, we can allow someone to edit the layout paragraphs plugin configuration, which we'll take a look at in a second. And we can also allow or choose not to allow for a particular role to rearrange components or to use the reordering tools for components. It's something that we've had a lot of requests for, both from clients, and I've also seen a lot of requests in the wider community, is for the ability to support scenarios in which one role is responsible for creating the layout and a completely separate role is responsible for editing the components within the layout. Once those permissions modules are turned on, and again, there's a number of other permissions we'd have to configure to really get this role, that editor role, into this experience. But once those permissions are turned on, they manage these options that we see in the controls interface. So if you do not have the ability to reorder content, you wouldn't get this drag handle, you wouldn't be able to move this around at all. And then with the permissions to the paragraph type permissions module, you can give people the ability or prevent folks from being able to edit or delete these paragraphs. And then finally, with the permission we just looked at a second ago for the layout plugin configuration, we can remove the ability for a role to see this form at all. And if you recall, when we were talking about this in the context of our own site, all of the formatting options for these layouts are provided from that custom layout plugin. So if you're using custom layout plugins and those plugins are providing a form where the user has options for manipulating the layout, again, using these roles or using these permissions rather, you can pretty easily restrict who can access these forms and thereby who can access those styling options. Great. Okay, that is just about all I've got. I think hopefully everyone has a sense for what the install process is like for this module, what the different configuration options are, and then again with those those additional permissions modules, one which is a submodule of the paragraphs module, the paragraphs type permissions, the other is a submodule of layout paragraphs, the layout paragraphs permissions module. There's just a lot of flexibility in how these fields can be set up and the way access can be given to different roles. So